I didn't hear her voice first. I heard the glass chandelier above us give a faint, trembling chime, the kind it made when the air shifted just slightly. My mother leaned forward, elbows delicate on the table, her expression soft in the way only cruelty can hide itself. "We only invited you because it would have looked rude if we didn't," she murmured, eyes never lifting fully to meet mine. "So try not to linger." For a moment, everything on the table froze. My sister smirked into her wine. My brother kept swirling his drink, detached, like he was observing a scene that had nothing to do with him. No one looked at me. No one asked if I was okay. It was as if the sentence floated over the table and dissolved without landing anywhere. But I felt it. A warm heat rising from my chest into my cheeks. A familiar sting, not surprising, but sharp enough to remind me that some wounds reopen without warning. Still, my hand stayed steady as I picked up my glass. I took a slow sip. Then I rose from my chair. Not a single person reached out. Not a single head turned. I walked away from the table, the hallway, the house, and nothing in their world shifted for even a second. But 2 weeks later, every one of them would feel the ground move. My name is Lotus, and that night wasn't the pain that broke me, it was the clarity that finally shaped me. When I was younger, my grandfather's cabin at Larkwell Lake was the only place that didn't echo with dismissal. It was where mornings began with silver water and soft fog, where he handed me a fishing rod with hands steady and sure, teaching me that quiet didn't have to mean small. Evenings ended with firelight, sticky marshmallows, and his voice saying, "This place is yours, kiddo. One day you'll protect it." I held on to those words like a lighthouse. But when he passed, everything shifted. The cabin, legally mine, became the family cabin. Decisions about it happened in group chats no one invited me to. Photos appeared in frames at home, everyone laughing on the dock, posing on the porch, grilling outside, as if I had never existed there. I wasn't forgotten. I was edited out. Before we continue the story, please tell me in the comments what's your name and where you're listening from, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. But the night they planned a trip to my cabin without mentioning me, that's when everything changed, and they never saw it coming. The thing about being overlooked your entire life is that you start learning to read silence the way other people read words. In my family, silence wasn't absence, it was assignment. A role. A position. A label I never agreed to wear but was expected to carry anyway. My brother was the golden one. My sister was the delicate one. And me? I was the functional one. The extra pair of hands. The reliable shadow. The afterthought that kept things running without being seen. I learned early how invisible I was. When I got on a roll, no one bothered showing up to the ceremony. When I worked 2 jobs to get myself through community college, my mother used me as a warning. Make better choices than Lotus did. Not cruel, not loud. Just steady, constant dismissal, so soft it was almost elegant. I remember one summer when I finally tried to speak up. They were planning yet another weekend at the cabin, and I stood in the doorway holding a bag of groceries. "I'd like to come too," I said, voice barely above a whisper. My mother didn't glance up from her planner. "All the rooms are taken." "Maybe next time," she murmured. My brother snorted. My sister kept scrolling her phone. No one asked why my voice shook slightly. No one noticed my hand tightening around the grocery bag. I had picked up those snacks because they asked me to. Someone needed lantern batteries. Someone needed marshmallows. Someone needed the folding chairs. I was useful as long as I stayed on the edges. I set the bag on the counter and left the room quietly. No one called after me. Honestly, I don't think they realized I'd walked away. Looking back, that was the day I understood how deeply they expected me to remain small. Silent. Convenient. But the Real crack arrived 2 nights after the dinner, the same night my phone lit up on the kitchen counter while I rinsed a mug. The family group chat was buzzing with messages I never opened anymore. I dried my hands and tapped the notification. There they were, planning the annual trip to the cabin. Photos of grills, matching shirts for porch pictures, lists of groceries. Paragraphs of excitement. And my name wasn't mentioned. Not once. Scrolling further, I found a message that made my chest tighten. All the bedrooms are taken anyway. She rarely shows up. Someone else added. We'll use her key if she forgets to drop it off. Her key. As if I didn't own the entire place. Then, a bank email. A reminder about a joint account I didn't recall creating. My name beside my mother's. Fees, taxes, auto payments tied to the cabin, all linked to me. My hand stilled. This wasn't being overlooked. This was being used. And when I discovered just how long they'd been using my name behind my back, everything inside me shifted, and the first step of my quiet revenge began. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. The kitchen was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums in your ears, thick and heavy. The refrigerator buzzed softly behind me. A car passed outside. But inside my chest, everything felt still, suspended. The cabin wasn't just a place. It was the only part of my childhood untouched by their indifference. The only thing my grandfather left exclusively to me. And now I was looking at digital proof that my family had been treating my name like a convenient signature. A placeholder. A stamp they didn't have to earn. I set the phone face down on the table. New messages vibrated against the wood, each buzz like a finger tapping my shoulder, trying to pull me back into the role they assigned me. But I didn't pick it up. Instead, I sat by the window, knees pulled to my chest, watching the city lights flicker across the glass. Towels hung unevenly on the counter. A stack of unopened mail leaned near the fruit bowl. Everything around me felt paused, like the moment just before a storm breaks open. For the first time in a long time, I felt something settle inside me. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. A quiet, precise kind of clarity, the kind that comes when you finally stop begging for a place in a room that was never meant for you. I closed my eyes and inhaled deeply. When I opened them again, I wasn't the same girl who walked away from the dinner table 2 nights earlier. Something had shifted. Aligned. Hardened. And they had no idea. The next morning, I woke before the alarm. Soft gray light filled the apartment, the kind that makes everything look honest. Real. Unfiltered. I tied my hair back and started the coffee maker. Each drip felt like a countdown. I took out my old notebook, the one I used for freelance work, and turned to a blank page. The pen felt heavier than usual. I wrote 3 lines. Sell the cabin. Close joint accounts. Call lawyer about estate. That was it. A quiet plan, but sharp enough to pierce everything they'd taken for granted. I opened the metal filing cabinet. It groaned as always, resisting before giving way. I kept everything, old bills, statements, tax letters. Not because I was sentimental, but because I learned early that no one else would protect the things tied to my name. Near the back, wrapped in a worn envelope, was the deed. My grandfather's handwriting was still clear on the edges. I placed it gently on the table. At 7:14 a.m., I made my first call. Dan? His voice was sleepy, confused. Lotus? Everything okay? I need to sell the cabin, I said. No tremor. No hesitation. Just truth. And even he heard something different in my voice that morning. But selling the cabin was only the beginning, because once I opened the bank portal, the truth about what my family had been doing for years hit me harder than I ever expected. After I hung up with Dan, the apartment fell into a soft hum, the kind of quiet that makes you hyper-aware of every breath you take. The scanner whirred as I digitized the deed page by page, the glow from the machine casting faint lines of light across the kitchen counter. Each beep felt like another small anchor lifting from the past. Once the documents were sent off, I opened my laptop and logged into the bank portal. The screen loaded slowly, the blue-white interface reflecting on my face. I had no idea what I was about to find, but I felt it in my chest before I saw it. My name was everywhere. Accounts I never remembered agreeing to. A secondary signature on a credit line. Property tax auto payments tied directly to me. Transactions labeled family expenses coming out under my authorization, except I'd never authorized any of them. Some of these went back years. Each click brought another tiny shock of betrayal. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just steady, like water wearing down stone. I started closing everything. Close account. Remove name. Disable autopay. Freeze joint access. Each action made a soft clicking sound, like a row of dominoes falling in the distance. With every confirmation screen, a weight lifted from somewhere I didn't know was carrying anything. Halfway through the process, my phone buzzed. A message from my sister. Mom needs to finalize the cabin trip. Are you coming or not? The irony nearly made me laugh. I let the notification fade without opening it. By noon, I had shut down 4 accounts, removed myself from 3 others, and cancelled every payment tied to my identity. A financial clean slate, one they never imagined I'd claim. The apartment felt different now. Not bigger, not emptier. Just mine. Next, I drafted an email to the family estate lawyer, Harris. Hello. I would like to review all estate documents and ensure my interests are properly represented. Please advise on available dates. Lotus. Short. Cold. Professional. A tone my family never used with me, but one they were about to learn from. Around 3 p.m., Dan texted. Got the deed. Listing begins quietly. I'll update as offers come in. I replied simply. Thank you. As the afternoon stretched into evening, I watched the city outside my window, cars weaving beneath streetlights, people moving with purpose, unaware of the quiet revolution happening in room 405. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It felt intentional. Owned. Chosen. I had spent my whole life patching things they broke. Not this time. This time I wasn't fixing anything. I was undoing it. But the moment the cabin officially sold, and they discovered they no longer had access to it, that's when the true chaos began, and their panic became impossible to hide. 2 weeks slipped by quietly. No explosions. No accusations. No sudden storm. Just time, slow, steady, deliberate. I worked. Cooked simple meals. Answered emails. Lived in the silence I chose. It was almost peaceful, the kind of peace that feels unfamiliar at first, like wearing a coat that finally fits after years of pulling its sleeves too short for your arms. Then, one morning, while I was folding a stack of warm laundry, my phone buzzed. A message from Dan. Offer came in. Cash buyer. Fast closing. Funds will transfer directly to your account. I read it twice. Not because I doubted it, but because it felt like something happening far away, in someone else's story. But the name at the top was mine. I texted one word. Approved. And with that, the cabin was gone. Not stolen. Not shared. Not quietly absorbed into a family asset. Gone, by my choice. Of course, I didn't tell them. But they found out quickly. That evening, my sister sent the first frantic messages to the family group chat. I didn't open the thread, but the previews on my lock screen came fast, climbing over one another. Did someone change the lock code at the cabin? Mom says the realtor sign wasn't there last week. Lotus. What did you do? I placed the phone face down on the table. They kept messaging. Within an hour, my mother called 3 times. Then switched to voicemails. Lotus, call me back. This isn't funny. You had no right to make decisions like this. You need to answer the phone immediately. Then, quieter, cracked. Lotus, please. What's happening? Call me. But the silence in my apartment held firm. Next came the bank notifications. My mother sent a blurry photo, red warnings everywhere. Joint account closed. Credit line suspended. Property tax payment failed. Secondary authorization removed. She didn't include a message. She didn't need to. The panic was written in every pixel. Minutes later, my brother called. Then again. And again. His messages piled up, nearly shaking the phone across the table. What the hell is going on? I let the screen go dark. Then came the sound I knew was coming, the soft thud outside my door, followed by the buzz of the intercom. I pressed the button. A strained voice. It's Dad. Open the door. There was no warmth in it. Only tension, fear, even. I let him in. The door swung open sharply, hitting the stop. My father stepped inside, scanning my apartment with a tense, unsettled look. His shoulders, always broad and stiff, seemed lower than usual. Is it true? He demanded. Did you sell the cabin? Yes. You closed the accounts? Removed your name from everything? Yes. A long, shaking breath escaped him. Do you understand what you've done? I nodded. Entirely. But he didn't expect what I said next, or the envelope I slid across the counter, the one that turned our quiet conversation into a point of no return. My father stood in the doorway like someone who had walked into a room expecting a fire, only to find stillness instead. The kind of stillness that unnerves people who are used to being in control. His eyes traveled slowly around my apartment. The small dining table. The neatly stacked paperwork. The mismatched chairs. The quietness that didn't shrink away from him. He wasn't used to my world. He was used to me entering his. Lotus, he said again, softer this time, you've made a mistake. I didn't flinch. I didn't look away. I let the weight of his words fall flat on the hardwood floor between us. You've made your point, he added, voice tight. But this goes too far. I straightened from the counter and met his eyes. No, I said quietly. I haven't made my point yet. For the first time in my entire life, he seemed genuinely unsure of what to do next. He'd never had to decipher my expression before. He'd never needed to. I slid the small envelope across the counter. He stared at it without touching it. What is this? Dan sent it this morning, I said. The official notice. You should read it. He hesitated, then picked it up with slow, careful fingers. The paper crackled as he unfolded it. His eyes moved across the words, and I watched the shift happen in real time. A tightening of the jaw. A twitch of the temple. A breath pulled too sharply. It wasn't anger. It was realization. He looked up at me, and for the first time I saw it clearly. He understood the ground had moved, and he was no longer standing on solid footing. Lotus, he started, but the sentence dissolved. He closed the envelope, flattening the paper unnecessarily with his palm. We could have talked about this. We never talk, I said. We act. And I'm finally acting for myself. He exhaled, long and unsteady. My father, the man who could intimidate an entire room with a single glance, suddenly looked smaller. Not weak. Just human. He stepped toward the door. Your mother is distraught, he muttered. She'll adapt, I replied. He paused with his hand on the doorknob. You didn't have to do it this way. Yes, I said gently. I did. He stood there for a moment, suspended in silence, searching my face for something familiar, the compliant daughter, the quiet shadow, the convenient signature. Someone easy to sway. But I wasn't there anymore. Eventually, he nodded once, barely, and left without closing the door fully behind him. I pushed it shut myself. And for the first time in years, the silence he left behind didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space. It felt like ownership. It felt like mine. But the next morning, when they finally realized what the legal consequences would be, that's when the apologies began, the manipulation resurfaced, and everything took a turn they never expected. The morning after my father left, the apartment felt unusually bright, not warm, not cheerful, just clear. Sunlight pushed through the thin curtains in clean diagonal lines, landing on the stack of documents I'd sorted the night before. Everything had a quiet purpose to it. I moved slowly, deliberately, as if rushing would break the fragile honesty hanging in the air. I poured coffee into my chipped mug and stood by the window. Below me, the city moved like nothing monumental had happened at all, cars merging, people weaving through crosswalks, a cyclist adjusting his backpack strap. Life continued, steady and indifferent. My phone buzzed on the counter. A message preview lit up. Mom wants to apologize. Can we talk? Then another. We didn't know things were this bad. Please answer. I ignored both. I didn't feel anger rising or satisfaction burning in my chest. If anything, I felt, still. For the first time, their panic didn't pull me back. Their guilt didn't tether me. Their words didn't feel like obligations I had to respond to. The silence wasn't awful. It wasn't lonely. It was earned. I sat at the table, tracing the rim of my mug. The folder of legal documents was closed now, the deed no longer mine, the accounts severed, the lines of connection finally cut in ways they couldn't tape back together. These weren't threats or gestures. They were completed actions. Concrete. Final. I looked around the apartment, the uneven towels on the chair, the mail stacked neatly now, the soft light warming the floorboards. Everything felt grounded, aligned with a choice I hadn't been brave enough to make until now. Then, unexpectedly, a memory surfaced. The cabin at dusk, lake water turning copper under a sinking sun. My grandfather's voice saying, "Protect what's yours, even if others pretend it's theirs." I had spent years interpreting those words wrong. Protecting isn't the same as holding on. Sometimes it means letting go, completely, so no one can use it against you anymore. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail alert. My mother's voice played, shaky and uneven. "Lotus, if this is about the past, we can fix it. Please. Just talk to us. We're family." I closed the notification gently with my thumb. Family isn't defined by shared last names or inherited property. It's defined by shared respect, shared responsibility, shared truth. And we hadn't shared any of those in a very long time. I wasn't cutting them off. I was cutting myself loose. Some endings don't thunder. They exhale. They settle like dust after years of forced quiet. They feel like a door easing shut by itself, slowly, inevitably. And for the first time, the quiet didn't scare me. It felt like I finally heard my own voice. But the final moment, the one that truly closed this chapter, didn't come from them, it came from me, and what I chose to say to the world afterward. The day settled into a kind of calm that didn't feel fragile anymore. It felt earned, like a breath I'd been holding for years finally released without trembling. Sunlight drifted across the apartment floor as the morning stretched into something quiet and steady. I moved through the space as if seeing it for the first time. The small table with its coffee rings. The pale scratches on the wooden chairs. The old mug warming my palms. These weren't signs of lack. They were signs of life, mine. My phone buzzed again farther away, muffled by a blanket on the couch. I didn't rush to get it. I didn't even glance its way. Whatever waited there, apologies, guilt, panic, excuses, none of it had the power it once did. I had spent so much of my life reacting to them. To their silence. To their decisions. To their expectations. But reactions aren't choices. And for the first time, everything I'd done in the past weeks wasn't a response. It was initiation. It was action. It was me choosing myself without asking permission. I placed the mug down and ran my fingers over the closed folder of papers, the last pieces of a life I had unknowingly carried alone. The deed was no longer my burden, the accounts no longer my responsibility. The tangled web of obligation had been cut strand by strand. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt aligned, with myself, with truth, with the person my grandfather believed I could be. I thought of him often now. His voice steady in the quiet of memory. Protect what's yours. For years, I assumed he meant the cabin. But standing here, I understood he meant something else entirely. Protect your worth. Protect your peace. Protect the parts of yourself others overlook. I wasn't holding on to the cabin anymore. But I was holding on to myself. I walked to the window and pulled the curtains open fully. The city moved with a rhythm that didn't depend on me, and yet, somehow, I finally felt connected to it. Not invisible. Not forgotten. Just present. Whole. The phone buzzed one last time behind me, but I didn't check it. I didn't need closure from them. I didn't need validation or explanations or rewritten histories. Silence, the very thing they used to diminish me, now sat beside me like a companion. A quiet reminder that I didn't need to be loud to be seen, I just needed to stop shrinking. I took a slow breath, steady and full, and let my shoulders relax. Some stories don't end with triumph or dramatic confrontations. Some end simply, with a quiet reclaiming of self. If you've ever lived in a silence that wasn't your choice, if you've ever been overlooked, overshadowed, or used, then let this be your reminder. Your voice still belongs to you. Your story still belongs to you. And your peace is worth choosing, even if you choose it alone. Because sometimes the softest click in the world is the sound of a life finally becoming your own.